Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Ryan Oxner, Director of Community Quality, and want to walk you through a little bit of the features of this agreement that's before you this evening. To start with, I want to start with some illustrations of our current standard. And these three slides are pretty much the extent of our current standard. And what the illustrations tend to show is that it is lacking in some context and applicability to where it may exist in our downtown area. So the streetscape, and when we talk about that, we're talking about everything from the roadway where cars travel to where cars park to where pedestrians traverse, and to all those activities that we would like and hope to see in our public spaces in the downtown area. So the next couple of slides are some illustrations from our current standard. This illustration, both of these illustrations actually, are of course constructed near here on Broadway and First Street, and they work very great for those locations. What we're finding is as we expand that to apply designs to other areas, they're not necessarily considering context and meeting the needs of those areas. Now, this one, for example, lacks any information about how wide should the traffic lanes be, for example. Those are important because that affects the speed that people travel through, the distance that pedestrians have to walk across those travel lanes. Another example, as we can see, this is what was constructed on Broadway. This is about the time that those standards came to be in place. If we use this, would it best meet our needs if we took that somewhere else? As we've worked through this streetscape standard downtown, we've dealt with, does it have the lighting that we like and desire? Does it have the electrical capabilities that we desire to support the festivities and activities down here? So as we look to design new streetscapes, we want a standard that reflects all those considerations and things we're learning from these examples. So here's some examples of what a complete streetscape standard would look like, and this begins to talk through the process of what this agreement will walk us through. This is an example from another city that Kimley Horn did, and they are actually who's going to be our consultant on this if you award this contract to them. This is actually from Waco. But what this illustrates is that the consultant is going to walk through and look at the different streets we have in this downtown area, everything from generally University to Frets, south to approximately 5th Street, and to begin to understand what's there, what are the uses that occur to it, and what needs to happen in the public space in regards to all those elements I described. And this is another example from that study and that standard. This is an entertainment street, just one of the several styles that might be developed. And what the standard will do, it'll provide identification for what type of street it is and all of those spaces for the activities that should happen on that particular type of street. And here we see how this standard will take on a broader, comprehensive. Our standard will look different than this. But this just illustrates that it doesn't just look at that one small section of a block. It'll look at a broader section and identify how all those things that happen on the private property interface with the public realm. And then also to get down into the details of identifying and specifying what should all our fixtures and furnishings be like in the streetscape. Everything from, like you see illustrated there, the light poles and the benches and the landscape, the bollards, all those types of elements. Now, this agreement was recently reviewed by the Central Edmond Urban District Board. They recommended approval, as does staff. Happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Ryan, can you talk about the public outreach that will be involved?
Thank you for the reminder on that. Yes, public outreach will be one of the first steps in this, and we will be using representation from DEBA. We'll be reaching out to them in the Central Edmond Urban District and property owners and tenants in the downtown who use this space to understand what they need the space to accommodate and achieve is one of our first steps.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Oxner, our current standards aren't sufficient for what reasons?
Our current standards aren't sufficient because they don't provide context about what's around that area They also don't provide the dimensional standards, the information we need about, like I said, how wide traffic lanes should be, but also what's the construction under the sidewalks, what's the types of surfaces that the sidewalks are made out of, how are they all constructed and tie in together to provide a complete system. So our current standards don't provide that.
And the recommendations coming from Kimberly Horn in working with you and Mr. Ince and Mr. Bryan, you'll tighten, and Ms. Dozier, those will get tightened up to where all of your needs or desires for the streetscape in the city of Edmond will get buttoned up with this one report.
Yes, sir. All those things will get buttoned up. Everything from the needs of the folks who maintain those lighting systems to the needs of the business owners who want to operate and function in that space and adjacent to it. So that's the intent and expectation that all of that will be captured in this, yes.
Okay. And you think you'll continue, or their recommendations will continue some type of territorial design that has been kind of the norm downtown?
That's a great question, and that's something that the stakeholder group that I've responded to Mr. Rigby about will help decide what that style and look and feel should be like.
And last question, sir, what's their timeline?
Their timeline, they anticipate their work will take 6 months. I plan for another couple of months to capture the input and review through different boards that we want to engage. So I'm anticipating completion within 6 to 8 months.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
When you mentioned about the public outreach, you talk about DEBA, the property owners, tenants downtown. What about for the citizens that we expect that we want, that we need to come downtown? Are we going to have citizens outreach for them? Because some of the comments I've heard are, I'm glad we're going to look at the sidewalks because certain areas of the bricks, that we have down there. One is there's a cost associated with maintenance because once the foundation starts moving, then there's a hazard there. But from the ADA and people that have mobility issues, the bricks cause a problem, and other things that not property owners, but some of the store owners are talking to me about the trees and the growth that, the tree is beautiful, but nobody can see my sign that's here now. And all that, and then others just line of sight when we're backing out because is it the proper angle that we're backing out compared to seeing that vehicle either coming north or south. So those are some of the other things that I'm assuming that are going to be considered or talked about in this study as we try to become more mobile in our downtown area and are looking for safety of just the walking and the pedestrians and also of the vehicles.
That's a great point. Yes, thank you. Safety and accessibility and citizen desire. We want to capture all of that through this process. Mm-hmm. And we're going to use our stakeholder group and our public boards as this is developed to go through and capture as much of that as we can. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So if we have someone from the public who wants to make a comment, are we going to have access for them to send in a note or something like that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm assuming that this study's not going to have anything to do with a street closure, particularly Main Street.
It's a good question. This study has nothing to do with that street closure.
Okay. If it comes up in your discussions with them, tell them you know at least one member of the council that's never going to be for that. Would you do that? Thank you.
Absolutely. Sure.
Ryan, I did have a resident reach out, and I'm sure some of the other council did too, who has a daughter who's handicapped and has a wheelchair and a van that she has to get her in and out of, and didn't have a place to park there, and she said she had to back out into the traffic and just stop traffic to wheel her daughter into the car. So I know we're talking about walkability. I know there's parking garages that people can walk to, but there's some folks who can't. So maybe that's something, a couple of van accessibility parking spaces that could be put in.
Okay. Absolutely, and great comment and input from each of you this evening, and that's the level of detail and richness that we need to capture in this study. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So one other question. Are we going to receive a preliminary brief before it goes final?
We will absolutely provide you a preliminary before it goes final. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.